Helena had always been the type of person who believed she had everything under control. I had a good job, a stable relationship, friends nearby. Life was going at a comfortable pace until the day everything started to fall apart, one piece at a time. First came the dismissal. The cold warning, the 5-minute meeting, and the automated thank you for services rendered email. Then, the end. No fighting, no shouting, just I don't feel the same anymore, said by someone she believed to be the foundation of everything. And then, silence. That heavy silence that fills the house when there's no one left to ask you how your day was. For weeks, Helena lived on autopilot. He would wake up late, drink coffee without tasting it, and spend hours staring at the ceiling, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. Sometimes, she cried. Sometimes she just stood there as if she were suspended in time. But the worst part wasn't what she had lost. It was something she could no longer believe. That things could get better. One morning, looking at her reflection in the mirror, she saw a woman she barely recognized. Deep dark circles under the eyes, messy hair, dull eyes. "Who are you?" he murmured, but the echo of her own voice was the only answer. That day, she decided to go for a walk without a destination, just to breathe. The cold morning air stung my face, and the streets seemed grayer than ever. Helena walked among hurried people, each with their headphones on and distracted gazes. She felt invisible, as if the world had forgotten she existed. In a moment of distraction, he stopped in front of an old shop window, one of those that seem forgotten in time. It was a music instrument store. On the window, an aged sign read, "Soul concerts every Friday. Free admission." Without knowing why, she felt the urge to go back there. Not because of music, but because of something she couldn't yet name. That Friday, she kept her promise to herself. The small auditorium was simple, wooden chairs, yellowish lighting, and a modest audience. On stage, an elderly man was playing the violin. The melody was sad, but there was a quiet beauty in that sadness, as if each note were saying, "I know it hurts, but there's still something alive inside." Helena cried. Not much, but enough to feel something in his chest breaking in, at the same time, being set free. When the concert ended, the musician approached the audience and said in a calm voice, "Music cannot exist without pauses. The silence between the notes is what gives meaning to the melody. Life is the same sometimes. God is just teaching you to listen to the silence." Those words pierced Helena like an arrow. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. He felt like he was part of something bigger, even though he didn't yet know what it was. That night, he went home and wrote on a piece of paper, "Perhaps this emptiness isn't the end. Perhaps it's just the interval between two songs." He stuck the note on the mirror. And the next day, when she woke up, he was still there, reminding her that, even in the dark, there is something waiting to begin again. In the following days, Helena began to leave the house more frequently. Nothing grand, just short walks to the bakery, or a stroll around the block. But every step outside the apartment walls was an invisible victory. Still, the emptiness remained, like a silent shadow. She tried to ignore it, but all it took was a memory, an old notification on her phone, and her chest tightened again. It was as if the past kept pulling her back. One morning, as he passed by the instrument shop again, he saw the old violinist sitting in the doorway, tuning his violin. He smiled. "You're back." Helena returned the smile shyly. "Actually, I was just passing by." "Sometimes it's just the passing by that changes everything," he replied calmly. She stood there for a few minutes, watching him play. The music was simple, but there was something profoundly human about it. "How can you play something so beautiful after all these years?" he asked. The man looked up and said, "Because I've already lost everything I could lose. And I discovered that when we play from a place of pain, the music reaches the hearts of those who are also trying to recover." Helena remained silent. Somehow, he described exactly how she felt, as if he had read her heart. That night, at home, she decided to try something new. Writing. He picked up an old notebook and began to put on paper what he could never say out loud. Loose words, confused thoughts, painful memories. There was no objective, it was just a venting of frustration. But as she wrote, she realized that each sentence eased the weight inside her a little. It was as if each word was a note in his own music, an attempt to give form to what was previously just chaos. Without realizing it, he began to develop a habit. Every day, she wrote something down, a memory, a feeling, a prayer. And, little by little, the pain began to transform into history. A few weeks later, he received an unexpected email. It was from the old company, inviting her to a restructuring meeting. They wanted her to come back, but in a different role. For a moment, her heart raced not because of the opportunity, but because of the doubt. Did going back mean going backwards? He spent hours thinking. She remembered how she felt there, exhausted, invisible, trapped in a routine that drained her. But he also recalled the fear of not having stability, of not having anything left. It was a crossroads, security or freedom. When in doubt, he decided to talk to the old musician again. He found him sitting on the sidewalk. As always. If I go back, maybe everything will be the same as before. But what if I don't go back, and nothing works out? She lamented. He looked at her with that piercing gaze, and replied, "Daughter, sometimes God closes a door so forcefully that we think it's a punishment, but it's just so you stop insisting on staying in a place that makes you feel small." Helena felt a shiver. It wasn't just advice, it was a truth she already knew, but didn't have the courage to accept. That night, she wrote in her diary, "I'm afraid of the void, but I'm even more afraid of returning to a soulless life." The next day he refused the offer. And, for the first time, he felt no guilt. That same day, while walking, he saw a pamphlet pasted on a lamppost, "Writing and Emotions Workshop, registration open." He smiled. It was as if the universe was saying, "Now it's up to you." Helena signed up. She didn't know what to expect, but she felt that this was the next step in her new beginning. In the first few meetings, I could barely speak. People read their texts, laughed, cried, and shared them. She just listened, still shy, still rebuilding herself. But, little by little, it began to open up. He talked about his job, the end of his relationship, and his fear of the future. When he finished, the room fell silent. One of the participants held her hand and said, "Thank you for saying out loud what so many of us feel but never had the courage to admit." At that moment, Helena realized something important. The pain she carried wasn't hers alone. It was a large gathering, and somehow, sharing made everything easier. He returned home with a full heart. Not because everything was resolved, but because, for the first time, I felt I was heading in the right direction. The old musician was right. Life was made of pauses. And perhaps that was just the part where she learned to breathe again before the next song. The days went by, and the writing workshop became the highlight of Helena's week. She looked forward to those afternoons, like someone waiting for a ray of sunshine after days of storm. Gradually, he began to bring new texts, some about pain, others about hope. And each time she read aloud, she felt less afraid of being vulnerable. Once, the workshop facilitator, a woman with gray hair and a serene gaze, called her aside. "Helena, you have a gift. Your words resonate deeply. Have you considered sharing this with more people?" Helena laughed, somewhat awkwardly. "Oh, I don't know. Who would be interested in my stories?" The woman smiled. "More people than you realize. Sometimes, all someone needs is to hear that they're not alone." That phrase kept swirling in Helena's mind for the next few days. She had never thought that her words could serve a purpose beyond her own relief. But what if they could? He decided to create an anonymous account on social media. He called it Between Silences. There, she began posting short texts, fragments of thoughts, bits of feelings, simple reflections. Nothing planned, nothing rehearsed, only what came from the heart. In the beginning, almost no one read. But she continued. It was more of a form of therapy than an attempt at success. Until one night, one of the texts exploded. He spoke about new beginnings, about the fear of losing everything, and yet continuing to try. Within a few hours, hundreds of people began commenting. "Thank you for writing what I was never able to say. I cried reading this. You saved my day." Helena stared at the screen with tears in her eyes. She didn't know it, but at that moment her life was beginning to change again, this time. Not because of loss, but because of purpose. In the following days, the profile grew rapidly. Invitations for podcasts, lectures, collaborations. But the most beautiful thing was what she read in the private messages. People who were going through depression, grief, separations, found some comfort in her words. One night, he met the old musician again, on the street. He was still there, with the same violin and the same peaceful smile. "Look who's back," he said. Helena smiled. "I came back to say thank you. Your words helped me more than you can imagine." He gave a light laugh. "I only played what my heart told me to. You were the one who listened." Helena talked about the profile, the texts, and the people who were connecting with her. The man nodded, a glint in his eyes. "See, sometimes, what seems like the end is just the beginning of something the heart always wanted to say, but the noise of life wouldn't let it hear." That phrase stuck with her. And for the first time, Helena didn't feel adrift, she felt guided. One day, she received an unexpected invitation to participate in an event about emotional health and creativity. They wanted her to tell her story. Fear struck. She wasn't a speaker, nor a psychologist, just a woman who learned to rebuild herself. But something inside her told her she should go. On the night of the event, my hands were trembling. The microphone seemed too heavy. But when she began to speak, the words flowed, honest, raw, human. He talked about being fired, the breakup, the emptiness, and, most importantly, about the moment he understood that rock bottom is also the ground. The audience fell silent. And then, when it was over, came the applause, not the applause of someone applauding a speaker, but the applause of someone recognizing their own pain in someone else's words. After the lecture, a young woman approached. I was going to give up on everything this week, but when I heard you say that silence is also part of the melody, I think I've found a little hope again. Helena held her hand and smiled with tears in her eyes. You are not alone. None of us are. That night, on his way home, he looked out the bus window and saw the city lit up. He thought about everything he had lost and everything he had found in the process. He realized that sometimes the world needs to fall apart for us to finally see who we are without the roles, without the titles, without the crutches. And when the bus stopped at the red light, she saw the reflection of her own face in the window. She was no longer the tired and lost woman of months ago. She was someone who had scars, yes, but she also had a sparkle. She smiled and murmured softly, perhaps the purpose is not to conquer the world, but to remain standing when the world falls apart. And at that moment, I knew, everything she thought she had lost was, in fact, what had brought her there. The success of Between Silences was growing faster than Helena could keep up with. The profile already had over 100,000 followers, and each post generated hundreds of emotional comments. She received invitations for interviews, partnerships, and even a proposal to turn her writing into a book. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, an old voice began to whisper, do you deserve this? What if they find out you're still afraid? It was curious how success could awaken the same ghosts as failure. Because when life pushes you upward, it also tests whether you truly believe in the worth you claim to have. One afternoon, a famous publisher got in touch. They wanted to publish a book with her name, but they asked for one condition. We're going to need to adjust the tone of your stories. Less pain, more self-help. More motivational quotes, less vulnerability. Helena remained silent. It was a tempting offer, a contract, visibility, prestige, but it was also a trap, disguised as an opportunity. He remembered what the old musician had said one day, when the world tries to mold you, it's because you've started to bother them. That night, she sat in front of the computer, reading and rereading the proposal. On one hand, there's the chance to grow. On the other hand, there's the risk of losing the essence. He opened his diary and wrote, is it worth being heard if I have to silence who I am? The next day he replied to the email calmly and courageously, I appreciate the opportunity, but my words stem from the truth, and if I have to prune them to fit a format, I'd rather keep writing for free. He sent it and closed the laptop, heart racing, hands trembling but chest light. A few days later, he received an unexpected message. An independent publisher, who had been following his profile for months, wanted to publish the book exactly as it was. Raw, sincere, and human. Your words heal, precisely because they are real, he wrote. It was there that Helena understood. When you don't betray your essence, destiny finds a way to reward you. During the writing process, she revisited her past pains and realized how much she had grown. The texts about loss now seemed more like texts about rebirth. Fear no longer paralyzed her. It was merely a reminder that she was still alive. On the night of the launch, the auditorium was packed. Family, friends, readers she had never met, but who said they felt part of the story. When he stepped onto the stage, the microphone seemed less threatening this time. She began by saying, I thought I had lost everything. Today I see that I only lost what wasn't meant for me to carry. A profound silence filled the room. Helena looked at those people and continued, life will knock you down. It will make you doubt who you are. But remember, even the bottom of the well can be the beginning of a ladder, if you decide to climb it. Applause echoed. But the most beautiful part was what came next. Lines of emotional people, sharing their own stories, expressing gratitude for the words that helped them move forward. Among them, a lady with white hair and teary eyes said, I lost my son 2 years ago. I thought I would never be able to breathe again, but one day, I read your text about the silence between the notes. And since then, I try to hear my pain as part of the melody of life. Thank you, my daughter. Helena hugged that woman tightly. Because at that moment, she understood that what she was doing went beyond writing it, was giving meaning back to what seemed meaningless. When he got home, he opened the window and looked up at the sky. Down below, the city lights flickered like small reminders of the past. She smiled and thought, everything I lost brought me to who I am. But life, wise, as always, still had one more test in store. The following week, he received some news. The old musician had passed away. Her heart tightened. He went to the instrument shop, which was now empty. In the shop window, the same violin and next to it, a yellowed note. In his handwriting, for Helena, who learned to listen to the silence, never stop playing the music that lives inside you. She cried right there, silently. But it wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. She knew that this man had been an angel disguised as a musician, placed in her path when she most needed to hear the sound of hope. He left the store and walked down the street. The wind blew gently, and the sunset tinged the sky with gold. Each step felt like a silent thank you to life for breaking it, but also for rebuilding it in a much stronger way. The following months were the easiest of Helena's life, not because everything was perfect, but because, for the first time, she no longer needed it to be. She learned to accept the rhythm of things, the beginning, the middle, the end, and the new beginnings that come disguised as loss. The book continued to reach more and more people. Messages poured in from everywhere, people saying that her words had helped heal wounds that seemed incurable. And with each story, Helena noticed something even more beautiful. She had transformed pain into a bridge. One morning, she was invited to give a lecture at a university. Theme: resilience and the power to start over. While preparing her speech, she leafed through her old notebook, the same one where she had written her first outpourings, when everything seemed lost. There were the trembling words of a broken woman, trying to understand why the world had turned upside down. And now, there she was whole, standing, with a firm voice and a clear mission. That night, upon arriving at the university, he saw the auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, curious onlookers, all were there to hear the story of an ordinary person who had fallen and gotten back up. When he stepped onto the stage, he took a deep breath and began. I am not here because I am strong. I am here because one day I was weak, and I decided to keep going anyway. The words resonated with a force she herself hadn't expected. Helena told everything. The dismissal, the breakup, the emptiness, the old musician, the writing, the purpose. And he finished by saying, life broke me into 1,000 pieces, but each piece taught me something I wouldn't have learned whole. The silence that followed was not absence, it was reverence. Some people were crying, others were smiling. It was as if each one had found a mirror within that story. When the event ended, a girl approached with a note in her hands. I wrote to you, she said, embarrassed. Helena opened it. I thought my story had come to an end. But after listening to you, I understood that the end is just the beginning told in a different way. Thank you for making me want to try again. Helena hugged the girl tightly. You can't imagine how much I needed to hear that myself one day. On his way back home, he passed by the old instrument shop. It was closed now, but the reflection in the glass showed the worn sign was still visible. Soul concerts every Friday. She smiled. Perhaps the music never stopped playing, it just changed location. When he got home, he opened the window. The night wind carried the scent of rain and the memory of how it all began. And there, alone, Helena spoke to the sky as one speaks to an old friend. Thank you for letting me fall, because it was on the ground that I learned to get up differently. He sat down at the table and began writing the final paragraph of his next book. The words came lightly. There will be days when everything will fall apart. Days when the heart will plead for answers that silence cannot provide. And in those days, remember, emptiness is not a punishment. It's the gap between who you were and who you're about to become. She closed her notebook, looked at the lamp, and smiled. She knew that this text would touch someone, somewhere, just as the old musician had touched her one day. Before going to sleep, she looked in the mirror, the same one where, months ago, she had cried, not understanding why everything had gone wrong. Now, the reflection showed a different woman. Tired, yes, but serene, complete, and as he turned off the light, he murmured softly, life always finds a way. Always. The sound of rain began to fall outside, rhythmic, soft, almost musical. Helena closed her eyes and felt peace. It wasn't the end of the story. It was just another pause. Before the next melody. When all seems lost, remember this. Sometimes, what seems like the end is just the beginning of something you don't yet understand. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to the channel. Here, each story is a reminder that hope may hide in life's pauses, but it never disappears. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. And share this video with someone who needs to remember that there's always a way to start over.